Hey there, welcome to episode 32 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, recording this on Wednesday, June 19, 2024. Happy Juneteenth. Today's episode is a request that you meet me at the library. Hopefully, wherever you have found this audio program, you are able to see the episode description, which includes the show notes. Pretty light today. Quick summary, which I will read. 2 links, because I didn't want to tell you all about libraries. Hopefully by now you know where to look for that information in a library. So let's get to it. The summary of today's episode: learning how to read at about age 3 made books and learning an easily reachable tool in the personal development toolbox early on. In the pre-digital age, there was much to be had visiting the library, and this remains true today in slightly different ways. For today's links, the usual 2 shameless self-promotion: buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. I use these as what I call out-of-band tools. I don't maintain those websites. I don't have to deal with them. If I did, I would fix both of them a little bit. But I use them as sort of like a link tree. These have become more popular on platforms that break the internet, that don't enable users to use the internet as it's intended. So you'll put it in your profile or something, a link tree or similar collection of links and so on. The buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile page is sort of a free-form page. It has an awful editor, and it doesn't display what you put in the editor in exactly the same way as you put it in there. So not without issue. However, you are welcome to check that out. So when I do eventually launch websites and get projects up and running and want to mention things that I'm talking about during one or more of my, at this point, 4 weekly audio programs on different topics, these are the places to go. buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. You are under no obligation to buy anything. You don't have to spend a dime, but like a tip jar, it's there if you want to use it. All of my projects are powered by coffee. And in fact, on the Buy Me a Coffee profile page there, I do list some of my favorite coffee beans. Any monies anyone chooses to pass through either of these goes towards coffee, which is indeed what powers all of my projects. Now, on with the show. Reading for the win. Somewhere there's a photo, at least one, of me reading with my mom, reading to my mom probably, on a couch on Graphic Boulevard in New Milford, New Jersey. I learned how to read very early and was proactive and conscientious about doing so. It was only Dr. Seuss back then in those early days. I recall we had many of the Dr. Seuss books. It was not an epic manuscript or anything of that sort, not yet. The ability to read early brought a lot of opportunity, though, and it actually caused problems in one case. One of my teachers, Mrs. Urban, my kindergarten and first grade teacher at Berkeley Elementary in New Milford, New Jersey. I don't know if she's still around, probably not. She was almost offended that because I already knew how to read, I was distracted in class. I didn't have to wait for each and every word at her direction. I could read ahead. So yeah, reading is fundamental, but it also upsets people sometimes. Teachers of all people. Teacher. This was not common. To this day, I read constantly, all the time. I'm reading right now. Mostly articles of a technical nature. Over the years, that's been my sort of big focus area. Although in recent years, what is recent? Certainly over the last decade, while I definitely voraciously consume technical articles about software and technology and various aspects of engineering and all the nerdy stuff. I also take topics like current events, news, politics. I don't like politics, but it's sort of a harbinger for the end of the world, almost certainly. So politics to a degree, but anything going on in the world. Once I became a world traveler while I was working with Intel, getting beyond the domestic borders suddenly became more interesting. The interconnectedness of all things becomes more apparent when you get out and about. The pandemic. Oh, and I read about non-technical topics like the economy and even psychology sometimes, and various, kind of all over the map. Although I do also read a lot more about immunology and virology. Who amongst us didn't become something of an expert during the pandemic? Although some believe they're more of an expert than they are. I don't claim to be an expert in any of those things, but it's interesting to know the terminology. Specificity versus selectivity. The pandemic did bring back book reading for me. And I do listen to audiobooks of all kinds almost daily at this point. Usually when I'm outside walking, I try to get outside the house at least daily. Working from home, homing from work doesn't always lead to that automatically, so it's good to have a reason to get outside, a little exercise, a little book reading. I did just finish The Years of Rice and Salt, an alternate history focused on generally Middle East Asia area. Interesting book. In April of first grade, for me, we moved from New Milford, New Jersey to Glendale, Arizona, and I started attending Horizon Elementary School. So Horizon was like the newest. At the time I began attending there, it wasn't even named yet. So Unit 10, newest elementary school in the area, a nice new library, etc. So when I was there, from probably grades 1 through 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, included visits to the library on a weekly basis. So we would all line up in the hallway, walk down en masse to the library. This was the first library I used interactively, so I would actually go to the library and check out a book. It is the first library because I was in first grade. Although I will say I don't even remember going to the Berkeley Elementary Library when I was living in New Jersey, so I also don't remember going to any library, but again, I was pretty young. It's never too young to start, though. Get out there and read. So the librarian, Kitty Jaswinski, used to provide story time. So when we would go to the library, she would probably read for maybe 15 minutes. They had a reading pit, the stuff of a fantasy monster movie, perhaps. The reading pit was about 2 steps down, 2 kid steps, so probably like a foot of a sunken area with very thick industrial grade green carpeting. It's very weird, very, very strange texture. So you could sit in the pit, you could sit on the little steps, and she would read a book for a amount of time, and then we could wander around and examine the books on the shelves, maybe even check one out. So I used to visit that library. Generally speaking, I could just wander in there, grab a book. Eventually, I had so much free time because I was the kid that did the errands for the teacher. So I could stop by the library and check out a book if I wanted to. So I would check out books. This was my first interactive library experience, so that was okay. The library is where they placed the first computers that the school had. So by the time I was in 6th grade, luckily my 6th grade teacher, Debbie Reeker, was my 3rd grade teacher of the Debbie Reeker, Lori Raker team teaching doublet. So she said, hey, you should go check out the computers in the library. So in a little side, like not a side room, but it was like a like a little mini office. It had a window into the hallway and a door there, and then a door that led into the library. So it wasn't like a sequestered away from humans, but it was a little side office space. They had I think initially they had 2 Atari 800s and 1 Atari 400, but I think they did end up getting another Atari 800 because the 400 keyboard was definitely if you know, you know. So that's where I spent a lot of time. I could go there whenever I wanted to, learn how to program and stuff. So I was a self-taught basic programmer on the Atari 800. And this would figure in to probably all aspects of everything. Not the basics so much, but access to technology and making use of it in some way to further my educational agenda would be a theme that probably continues till today. We would occasionally go to the Velma Teague Library in downtown, bustling downtown Glendale, Arizona. It wasn't too frequent. We would go there every once in a while. I did have access to a library at school, so it was only occasionally. But of course, as you might imagine, my parents were very supportive of learning, continuous learning. So if I really wanted to go to the library, that was within the realm of possibility, mostly. Eventually, I would actually ride my bike there, my bicycle. So it was not too far, maybe, I don't know, like 3 or 4 miles away. That's total guess. It'd probably be much closer or farther. I don't know how I was at estimating distance. I was probably in the 5th, 6th grade region. So what is that? Like 9, 10. 10 is 4th grade, 11? 12 is 7th grade. Yeah, 11, 10, 9. Oh, 9 is 4th grade. Anyway, I believe there are occasional events there. I was not really into attending events. In fact, I generally speaking through this entire episode, you will hear that I don't tend to spend time in libraries. I tend to use libraries to go. So for being a desert, though, the library had a park-like placement. I remember there being benches outside and trees, shade trees, which must have been a lot of watering. So there were hopefully desert-friendly shade trees, but it was a quaint little library in a very walkable downtown Glendale. From what I remember, if I were to visit there today, I might say, "Oh, that's not what I was thinking," but memories count in this case. So I remember it being a fairly approachable and quaint little building that I didn't go to too frequently. I did attend Royal Palm Junior High eventually. That was 7th and 8th grade because Horizon was not a great school. The teachers were nice, but the facility needed some work. This was a failing of the school district itself, foreshadowing perhaps for the modern era. So I went to Royal Palm Junior High. This school had the concept of student aids. I assume this was not totally out of the blue, but I only attended this junior high, so I don't know. So they had student aid. You could take one period, one class slot, and be an aide in a class and for a particular teacher. So I said, hey, I could be a library aide, 7th period, the end of my day, final hour, and hang out there. This actually gave me access to a lot of the students who would come through the library end of the day, many teachers, and so I wasn't like just off shelving books, not interacting with people. And when I say access, I mean I would interact with a lot of people. So I got to know a lot of the teachers, a lot of the students, and so on. So it was unlike most teacher aides or student aides, I guess. Student aides working for teachers in a classroom, you're helping to grade papers, you're running errand, whatever you're doing in a classroom setting. Here in the library, it's a library, no classes. So they actually had a computer as well. So they had an Apple II Plus in the corner, not behind the desk, off to the side, but I could use that whenever I wanted to, which was convenient. I would not get a computer myself until I entered high school, Apple IIe. So the library was cool. I got to be quite friendly. Like, for example, I would get to school in the morning because we were out of district. So I would get a ride to school. Almost like 99% of the time it was my mom dropping me off. And then occasionally I would I took a bus once. That didn't go well. Occasionally, no, if it turned out it was all the time, get picked up, probably by my mom also, on her way back from work. My sister was attending a different school. This helped us avoid you are so-and-so's brother or sister, right? So completely changed the educational pathways for both of us, probably. This led to, there had to be picking up and dropping off because I was out of district on the way to work. So I would get to school like an hour before school started, and I would hang out at the library. Mrs. Bunnell would show up usually after me, but I was always there waiting by the door. And then, and she was fine with it. There was no problem with that. So I'd get in and shelve some books or whatever was on deck. And then at the end of school, if I had to wait a while, I could just go hang out in the library. On more than one occasion, but not too often, Mrs. Bonnell gave me a ride home. And between Mrs. Bonnell and I believe it was Deborah Sparks, they pretty much gave me the run of the place. That was pretty fun. Good times. It's always nice to be a teacher's pet, I guess. I would matriculate to Sunny Slope High School. For some reason, I only went to this library maybe 3 times in my 4 years. I certainly had plenty to do otherwise, so I wasn't really hanging out in our school library. I had an after-school job, of course. I've mentioned McDonald's. I did some other, I worked in other places in the second half of my high school tenure. I also did extracurricular activities after school. I was riding the city bus to get to school at this point, so I would have to be mindful of the school, of the city bus schedule as it related to the school bus stop. Also got more into like doing high school kid things, so going to movies, going to the mall. Just didn't spend as much time checking out library books. I was still reading plenty. Just didn't go to libraries as often. I learned during high school that I am not at all excited by assigned readings. So if there was a reading to do for classwork, so like on a schedule, it was really unappealing and became sort of I was just a procrastinator when it came to reading books. I did the classic read the beginning and the end of a book one time for a book report. This was a book report where you stood in front of the classroom and made a presentation about the book. And I don't know if I was convincing or not, but the teacher, Barbara Eberly, was known for giving grades to people, not their work. So I guess it turned out okay, but probably not for the right reason. I am better about assigned readings now, but not by much. During high school, or maybe before, the city of Glendale, where my parents still live to this day, built a new library, the Velma Teague Library. I don't even know if it's still open. I should check, but I think they probably closed it back then, or it stopped being a active library. Maybe they converted it, repurposed. They opened the new Glendale Public Library. It was actually a little bit farther away from my parents' home, but it was bigger. I think it was bigger. It felt bigger. It had desert landscaping outside, and it was on more of a sort of a standalone property. So it was not part of a downtown or any other, at the time, or any other surrounding attractions. So I don't imagine people would just wander into the library. So I don't know if that's good or bad. But a very useful library. I visited this library reasonably frequently and checked out books about everything from locksmithing. That's where I learned how to pick locks, from checking out books on locksmithing at this very library. Programming. When I would get my first programming job between my freshman and sophomore years at Harvey Mudd, I came back home, got a job at iPro, had to learn how to program in C. So I went and checked out the K&R, the infamous, horrible to learn from, but definitely can be done. Kerrigan and Ritchie, the C programming language. You've seen it. So I checked it out from this library. Eventually I would buy my own copy, but I checked it out from this library, read it cover to cover, very dry. Speaking of assigned reading, but it worked. So I became a C programmer. And this is one of the reasons why by the way, a tangent, it's one of the reasons I am concerned about the self-taught technologist, very common in the web front-end arena. The tools are very visible. There's plenty of sample source code out there. There's plenty to learn from. So there's often this notion that I can just teach myself. And as a academically credentialed, I guess, I don't know, I have a degree in engineering. We did a lot of computer stuff, a lot of hands-on, a lot of classwork, and so on. I think it is possible to be self-taught for something like building websites and so on. A lot of trial and error, but the more there is to know, I think the less complete a self-taught education is. So while I was self-taught C programming, and thanks to the Glendale Library for borrowing or for lending me that book that I borrowed probably twice, like a recheck out, totally useful for starting the journey. But I don't think self-taught gives a sufficiently large picture. This is obviously not always the case, but as a self-taught C programmer, and then later I would go on to learn about actual computer architecture and computer technologies and implementations and doing a lot of academic work in this area, I started to see that, self-taught gets you some of the picture. Knowing how to learn, which you learn while you're going to school, is another piece of that. So anyway, that was an interesting time making full use of the Glendale Library. I kind of wonder, though. I mean, it was a seminal moment for me. Like, hey, I can teach myself a programming language, but am I actually learning how to program, or am I just learning how to perform tasks? And if anybody were to look at my first C programming code, my C source code for the project I was working on, you would say, no, you do not know C. Because it had nothing about my source code was learned. So, the take-home libraries are a place of learning, but sort of self-directed, and that's not always great. I very rarely stayed in the library for any length of time. This is, again, a trend. I've never really thought about this before, but I really don't go hang out in libraries. Now, I'm about to tell one facet of this story where that's not true, but more generally speaking, I'm a to-go reader. When I went off to Harvey Mudd College, I had work-study options, I guess. I actually had several work-study jobs. I tutored kids in math at a local elementary school. I was a computer consultant for the computer science department, so my first access to a Unix, not a mainframe, but a Unix server machine. It was a substantial machine with Sun Spark workstations. So my first access to X Windows and all that, X11. So yeah, interesting time. So while I was at Harvey Mudd, I had my work-study options. Everybody said, you should work at Sprague, our science and technology or science and engineering library, whatever. Sprague, Sprague. Go work at Sprague, and then you can do your homework and get paid for it, which was indeed true. They requested that all of the library work-study employees have at least one shift during the day so that the library staff would actually know who you were. I think I did that once, and for some reason the scheduling was not good or whatever it was, available time slots and my class schedule and so on. So I always ended up working from, I think it was either 10 to midnight or 8 to 10 or something. It was till close. And because no staff were around in the evening, we had basically we had to cover the desk. It was myself and one other person. We would cover the desk. Now, technically, we could have, one person can cover the desk. The other could have been shelving books, but we somehow managed to always be doing homework, chatting, and helping people check out class notes so they could go photocopy them and return them 2 minutes later. That was the big thing. Although, so I spent a lot of time in that library. This was before the internet, so anytime you were working on any project or anything, you really had to make use of the library to have access to books and journals and catalogs of products and so on. If anybody remembers those big giant green catalogs of components for engineering projects. So yeah, there was plenty of resource there to take advantage of. So I was always there. It was always a quick, just jump up to the third floor or whatever it was. I will say also the fourth floor had like a board meeting room where we would have our meetings for the ASHMIC, what is it? Associated Students of Harvey Mudd College, something like that. I think that's, I was on the student council essentially. So fourth floor of the library, boardroom. So that was another great use of the library. It's a use of the library I think more people should take advantage of, and the library should enable more. So I'll refer to that at the end. But yeah, so I was in that library quite frequently, and I used to read periodicals there. They had a nice magazine selection in the tech sector, so I could read EE Times or anything else. And again, pre-internet, so I didn't go to my room and have a stack of magazines to read about technology and my future career path. This actually came in handy during an interview where I referred to an article that I had seen. I think it was in EE Times, Electrical Engineering Times, and the interviewer, I think it was at General Instrument, he said, "Oh, you take EE Times?" And I said, "Yeah." And he was sort of impressed by that, so I didn't say then I put it back. But it was absolutely useful to have access to that. So in that case, hanging out in the library, getting paid my whatever it was, like $5 an hour, that worked out okay. After Harvey Mudd, of course, I moved to Silicon Valley. I moved directly into Sunnyvale, which was the only city I lived in for the entire time, even when I moved back. I took a break. I moved to Phoenix for 4 years, and then I moved back, and I moved back to Sunnyvale, California. Why? Because I knew the city, and I was familiar with everything and all that. So Sunnyvale Public Library, I don't think I actually went. I may have visited there once or twice when I initially lived there. I lived very near that library. I'm sure I wandered by, and I said, "Hey, what's that?" I didn't have a library card in Sunnyvale. The second time, I definitely lived walking distance. The library is located very near City Hall and other sort of technically not in downtown Sunnyvale, but sort of downtown government edition. So I went there a couple times. There would be a meetup there once or twice, maybe. Still didn't have a library card, but I definitely went to the Sunnyvale Public Library more the second time I lived in Sunnyvale. It was nice. There was nothing noteworthy that I could see. There was nothing like, gotta go to the Sunnyvale Library. And there are libraries in the world that you must visit if you have an opportunity. It's just a fact. Like, they make the library an attraction, production by a street. So this would not be one of those, but it was fine. Like I said, probably in the entire time I lived in Sunnyvale, so 13, 14-ish years, I'm going to say I went there fewer than 10 times. There was a lot more emphasis placed on the internet, so I was definitely an avid internet reader from the time I visited Sunnyvale to move there. So July of 1993. And when I moved away to Vegas in August, the fire was in April. I had a house fire in April 2013, moved to Vegas August of 2013. So between that time interval, the internet went from a curiosity, oh, look, what's this Mosaic, which I was at first running on my admin machine when I was working at Apple in Mariani 1. Like, oh, what's this? There are like 10 web pages to look at. Interesting. To changing the world, breaking it in some places, and making many people rich. The internet changed the terrain for books. I think that's probably, it goes without saying, that's how Amazon got started. Amazon, and what was the other one? Elephant Books, I think it was. Abe's Books, another one. So book selling and the internet went together initially, but now, everything is electronic. There's really no reason. There are reasons, but there's no practical reason. An electronic book saves paper. It's infinitely portable, etc. Especially if you don't have any DRM on it. So PDF or equivalent, a great way to publish books. You can read them on various electronic devices. And if you really need to, you can still print those out. So controlling that becomes a separate issue. That's a different story for a different time, which I'm not really involved with. But the fact is, the Sunnyvale Public Library became just another library in Silicon Valley, and I don't know that they're destinations any longer. E-Ink, I remember attending a presentation from the eventual founders of the original Tesla car company, from which Elon acquired it. Their first undertaking was Rocket Books. So they had a really high contrast, very sharp display. It was not e-ink. It was not cholesteric. It was something closer to LCD. It was very attractive. So we were starting to see the future. When I was at Philips, they showed us this as well. Look, it's as high contrast as actual paper, etc. So it made reading very easily made reading more easy. No, that's none of those are good grammar. So I started to wonder if libraries should even have printed books, and they should just become digital reading rooms. You could just have shelves with Kindles and books and is it Kobo is another one, and all these e-ink technologies. Now we have color. So back then, this was 2000, so 25 years ago, I was wondering aloud, should there be libraries with paper books in them, or are we going to become, avid e-ink, or at the time, Rocketbook readers? And obviously this has not come to pass, but it's only been 25 years, and books have been around for a lot longer than that. So we'll see into the future what happens with books. In the meantime, I currently live in and make use of the Clark County Library. Clark County is where the city of Las Vegas is located, and I live in that very city. If you ever go to the Strip, you are not in Las Vegas. Trivia, something to know. You are in unincorporated Clark County. Why? Because if you put a casino in unincorporated Clark County, different tax structure, different everything. So the early days, those guys were real business-headed folks, those Italians. So at some point in here in Vegas, I learned about mobile apps. There were mobile apps that connect to libraries to enable electronic book checkout. So I have Libby. Libby is on my phone, and I use it frequently. You had to have a library card. So I headed over to there's a library branch, Clark County Library, for, let's see, what is it? I'm going to say it's about probably a 30-minute walk. But it turns out, and I had a car, I believe I had a car still when I first got my library card, but the public library branch that I visit, if I do, is directly on a bus route. So I can jump on the city bus, shoot over there if I really need to. However, as is the theme of this entire episode, I really don't hang out in libraries. So I went there to get my library card. The library is attached to a community center. So I went there once to the community center side to participate in a city council person. The person has this ward in which I live had a meetup. It was actually 2 months ago, I think. So I really don't make it over there too often. There is a Target across the street. If I need anything at Target, I can go in there. But I don't attend functions at libraries. The Clark County Library is very similar to other libraries. They do. Now, I will say I've been in other branches in Las Vegas. They're more modern. They're more, they are places that you could actually go to and hang out. I still don't. They're very far away. But it's this library. This particular library is geared slightly towards younger readers, although there is an adult. I think they call it the adult section or adult learning section. Maybe they have computers. They have other resources. So it's a fine library. It's great, but I think they do emphasize paper books for the younger crowd, and I there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I think, keeping that tradition going of having a paper book in your hand and knowing how to read it, being able to put it down and then pick it back up with a bookmark and all that. These are life skills. Developing a thirst for knowledge, and it's not always knowledge, but it's usually enjoyable to read. It's usually, there could be just pure pleasure reading, like reading a novel or a storybook, if you will. But just encouraging reading is a good thing. So that's fine. But I do wonder if the rush to mobile technologies, phones, tablets, is making the book less appealing, and if emphasizing the book in that environment is a good thing, or if it's more of a throwback, like the library just has those old twisted tree-based anachronisms. I have my iPhone. So I wonder about that, but I do also. I've never tried this. I'm not totally familiar, but from what I understand, Clark County libraries, it may depend on which branch or what they have available. But the Clark County Library System does offer tablets and other technologies. I think you can get a Wi-Fi access point, or like a cell phone Wi-Fi access point. I think you can get several bridging technologies. So you could literally read ebooks. If you have your library card, and you can use Libby, or there might be another one. You can read Kindle books on an Android phone. I know probably also on an iPhone. So you can, whatever the tablet technology that they're offering, you can probably make use of the electronic and audio book catalogs that are available. I actually use Libby on my phone more to check out audiobooks and read them. So I mentioned I just finished The Years of Rice and Salt. So that was an audiobook. I've consumed a lot of audiobooks. Ayn Rand? I did Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged as audiobooks. That was about 1,000 hours. Stranger in a Strange Land, etc. So there, one of my favorite books, though, to get out of this library is Kitchen Confidential read by Anthony Bourdain. I think he has a really good reading voice. I think whenever an author can read their own book, they put the inflections in the right places, they pronounce the words as intended, etc. So I listened to Anthony Bourdain reading his own book at 1.2 x speed. If you listen to Anthony Bourdain reading his own book at 1 speed, as he read it, it sounds maybe, I don't know if sad is the right word, but it definitely just has a low energy. If you bump it up to 1.2, he actually sounds excited about his book while he's reading it. So I do that. So I use this library remotely thanks to the pandemic as well. Luckily, I got my library card right before the pandemic, like a year before maybe, or somewhere in there. So I had my cool library card, and this was literally on the suggestion of someone I knew who said, "Oh, have you ever tried Libby? You can check out books in the library." So I checked out a book. Oh, hey, this works. Great. Then the pandemic came along, and it was like, oh, I can listen to audiobooks and go outside and walk around the neighborhood since the gym is closed. So I can get some exercise, get outside, don't be home all day, locked down. So I was making heavy use of the library and audiobooks in general. So I would go out walking with my earbuds and my phone. All good. But I do rarely enter the library here, and they do offer more stuff at our libraries here than I have encountered in my previous library experiences. So I don't know if that's good. Maybe I should check out the library more often. In fact, it would be completely reasonable to go to the library if it was closer. I could walk to the library and bring my laptop and be a co-worker. I could be chilling at the library doing some work. But why is this not as appealing? Well, libraries are fun. Oh, this is my conclusion, by the way. We're coming to the end. Libraries are fundamental social hubs of a sort. So you could go hang out at the library free. The hours are pretty good. There's lots of books. There's magazines sometimes. I assume they still have periodical racks. So if you're going to go to hang out with colleagues, if you want to have a quick meetup and stuff, sit at a table and sketch out some ideas, you're under no obligation to buy any coffee. You're not taking up a table that someone else that just ordered a sandwich and a coffee and is having 3 friends. They're looking at you funny, like, how come you guys aren't drinking coffee? Or you're just sitting there talking with Sharpies and large index cards. You can go to the library and do that all day. Nobody's going to bother you until they close. So it's an interesting opportunity to collaborate in person as a co-work space and or as an individual. Just sit in, put your earbuds in or whatever you want, and you can just hang out and do your homework or whatever you're doing. This is what libraries have usually been used for. In fact, when I mentioned Sprague, some students would come down to the library and go to one of the upper floors where there was nobody. You're the only one up there. And college students engage in whatever it is they're going to engage in that circumstance. But you could also get a carrel, which is one of those little desks with the side walls. So you're kind of in your own little world. Or you could actually get a room. You could reserve a little room, like it's the size of a bathroom, if you needed to study for your finals or whatever. So people would go there and do their homework or work on projects together. So libraries are still good for that. I don't know if people are taking advantage of that or if they'd rather just go to a coffee shop. So I will say, I know Barnes and Noble used to do this. I think Borders used to do this. And I think those bookstores are still around, at least one or two of them still. Why not have a coffee shop in the library? Would that not be a game changer? There's a coffee shop that gets rave reviews in the hospital near where I live. Why is there not a coffee shop in the library? There isn't, as far as I know. There is a coffee shop nearby. You can probably go to there's a Starbucks in the Target I mentioned, right? So you could walk across the street, get a coffee. Don't think you're allowed to bring beverages into the library. Bookstores have figured this out, so I don't know why libraries can't offer beverages. There's a co-work space in the fashion show mall on the Strip. It's the one with the big spaceship thing. If you go into fashion show and you go towards the north end of the mall on the first floor, there's a Capital One co-working space with a coffee shop in it. No books. So you can just go in there all day. They will not hard sell you. You can ask a question of the welcome person and they'll tell you about Capital One, but they're not going to wander up to you and say, hey, you're using our co-work space. You have to listen to my pitch. They do offer meeting space especially for nonprofits. So some places have figured out the balance. I'm wondering if libraries could figure that out and offer something as simple as a coffee shop. And they already have the internet access. They have tables. They do have meeting spaces that you can rent for some reason. I want to say it's about $50 here in Clark County. Might be more, but I think it's $50 for, an hour or two or something. This seems like a resource that's not being maximized, especially if we are going to be an innovation destination, not an innovation hub. Give up on that. Innovation destination. So people that are visiting the area, people that want to collaborate on a short-term basis, why not make these meeting rooms available? So curious about this. Adoption of digital and audiobooks as part of the offerings is very forward-looking. So that part I'm impressed with. Clark County is totally in on the use of Libby and maybe other tools, but I think they recommend Libby. So I have my library card. I have my Libby. I'm good to go. They do provide digital and audio books. Their selection is pretty good. It's not 100%, but it's not 0% by any means. So I'm impressed that they've adopted that. And the fact that they do have those bridging technologies, so you can check out a tablet and check out I'm pretty sure they were offering personal access points so you could access the internet over a cell network. I don't know how that works. I don't know if you have to pay some fee for that or how that works. I think you have to make a deposit. You have to make sure you bring those things back. But it's cool that the library is a place where you would get such things. That does make sense. So generally speaking, and this is something I suggested a long time ago, if libraries became digital reading rooms, right? You have access to all the digital technology that you need to function in a modern city, allegedly a smart city, but it could always be smarter. But you kind of need access to a computer now and then. You need access to something as simple as printing a document, something as simple as a place to get information. So it could be a computer to access the internet at large, or maybe I need specific information about voting places, about access to healthcare, access to, is it EBT payments or resources? Just all kinds of all kinds of questions people could have answered at a place like the library. It doesn't have to be the librarians or the library staff. It could be online resources. So kiosks, standalone computers, Wi-Fi access, the ability to check out these tablets and so on. These are all, I think, positive things. And I should go to our library at some point, check it out. Maybe this weekend. Maybe I'll get out of the house and not go walking around the neighborhood, favoring my old haunts in the form of the Clark County Library. So anyway, I wonder if you go to libraries anymore, if they are an anachronism across the board. I'm going to assume if I go to my public library that's very near me, I will find people there. So it's not going to be a ghost town. And again, I've been to other libraries in different parts of the greater Vegas area, Clark County, really. And they're nice. They're nice structures. They have resources. They have reason to go. If they had coffee shops, I think they'd be a winning business. And if post offices had banks as they used to, I think we'd be cooking with gas. So anyway, that's my story about libraries. I'm sticking to it. Libraries have always figured prominently in my own personal development as far as like career and knowledge. I consume library resources on the regular to this day. And it all started because I learned how to read. You should too. That's all I got for you today. Don't forget code for Vegas. No, I don't know why I was going to say that. That's a whole nother topic. I did yesterday's episode, our 2-year anniversary since forming our nonprofit. I was actually going to say, don't forget to check out buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. And on there, you will find a link to the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, if you're curious. Maybe that's what I was thinking. Not sure. The Ko-fi.com/DanHugo, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. I got to be honest with you. I really haven't put that to use, but that will be more of an announcement channel. They do more of a, not quite tweets, but just update posts, I guess. So I've really made more use of Buy Me a Coffee. I wish I had more projects in a postable form, and I would be making even more use of that. But those things are coming together slowly but surely. And in the meantime, go check out your local library and read, and then read some more. Thanks for listening.